So this is how public relations is often portrayed on television. The official definition by the Public Relations Society of America, which is our main professional organization, is that public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. So you all touched upon that a little bit in your version of what you believe public relations is. Where I think sometimes the challenge is that often some of the things that you talk about are often very commonly associated with public relations, the idea of positive or spin. And the way that I once told one of the executives that I worked with is that really my job as a public relations person is to be fair, to tell the truth, but to put the best possible light on the situation. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's positive. There are plenty of situations that are negative, and there's no way that there's a positive outcome out of this. But the idea is first and foremost that you have to be fair and be truthful. The most important asset that a public relations professional has is his or her credibility. I had once had a situation, I was working for a series of hospitals, and we had a labor issue that came up. And we had a hospital administrator, unbeknownst to anyone else, discipline some nurses who were trying to organize a union. And they were, for various reasons, allegedly not associated with the union organization, but he did it. You know how I found out? Because there were nurses picketing outside my office in the front sidewalk. And we had this elderly woman named Tony. He was the security guard down at the front desk who called me to let me know this. So I had to call the hospital administrator and ask him what's going on. And he blah, 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 went on about this. Tell me the truth. What's going on? Was the union organization have anything to do with this? And he was like, you just tell them this. You don't worry about the rest of it. And with that, I hung up on him. I went into my boss, who was the CEO of our state, and I said, if you want me to lie for him, I quit. Oh, I did call my husband on the way between the two and say, this might not be good for the mortgage payment, but I will not go out there and I will not lie to the news media because he did something. So with that, CEO said, A, you're not resigning. 2, you're not lying. And 3, we got him on the phone and we walked through the situation, got to the bottom of the story, and while it was ugly, the job was to be able to tell that story. Because there are a lot of relationships who are involved. Our nurses, our doctors, most importantly our patients, the news media, and a lot of other employees that we had at the hospital. I can go on and on about the list of people who were affected. So my job there was to think about these mutually beneficial relationships for all those people involved. But it wasn't just about spinning the story. So this was kind of the 5 different things that we're going to talk through here. So first of all, let's talk a little bit more about what a PR professional does in general anyway. And again, I came at it from my first job when I transitioned from journalism into public relations was very heavily media relations involved. And that's what I thought public relations was. By the time I got out of industry, probably less than 5% of my job was dealing with the media. I had a lot of other communication. So that's really kind of helpful to put it in perspective with the different types of PR people that you work with. So part of their job is to tell the story of the brand or the company that they're working for, so we covered that. Their part is to get into the minds of the consumer and have research to back up what they're doing. There's a lot of writing involved. They plan events, they talk to the media, they find advocates for their organization. Most importantly, like we talked about, they tell the truth, and they also educate themselves. My career, for the most part, has involved healthcare, which is really funny because I get nauseous cutting up a chicken. And on the junior high career score, I had a lot of journalism, writing were high, I had a lot of careers in the middle. Way down here was nursing, which made my mother, the nurse, cringe. So she really thought it was funny when I went into healthcare. I've watched open heart surgery, eye surgery, knee surgery. I've watched a baby being born. I've watched in vitro fertilization. All of this, again, knowing that I cannot cut up my own chicken at home. But I've had to learn a lot about healthcare as part of that. So while I am not a trained healthcare professional, to make fun of an old commercial, I do play one on TV when I would do the spokesperson part. But I had to know a lot about how the industry worked. So for my career progression, I worked for hospitals, and then eventually I went to work at Eli Lilly because they appreciated the fact that I knew so much about how hospitals worked, how to build relationships with physicians and with hospital administrators. And then from there I went to WellPoint, which is now Anthem again. It was Anthem WellPoint and then Anthem. But there, my job was to support our chief medical officer with all of his public relations needs. But his audiences and relationships were with physicians, with hospitals, with insurance members. So all this knowledge I'd built up over a few years really paid off in understanding the system. So I can I know probably more than I need to know about healthcare. So when we talk about it, again, media relations is one component of a lot of different things that people in public relations do. So part of that is also to keep that in mind when you call them and when we talk more specifically about them. So, and one of my favorite stories, is I moved, probably my only job in PR that was heavily media relations was that first job. After that, I had different responsibilities. So my job wasn't necessarily to sit and wait for the phone to ring from someone in the media and jump on it like I did in the first job. But I was trying to get all these other types of things done. And my favorite reporter in Indianapolis worked at top-rated newscast, wonderful person, but inevitably she would call me after their morning meeting, which was from 9 to 9:30, and this is a slight exaggeration, but it would be, we need a red-headed neurologist who's left-handed who could talk about this obscure disease that some celebrity has. And, oh, by the way, I only have a photographer from 12:30 to 1:30. Can you make that happen? So, and again, extreme exaggeration on what she would want, but all of a sudden, a PR person is stepping away from one of these other things to try to fulfill your requests. And that's fine, that's part of our job, and we love that. But just trying to keep in mind that it can be kind of complex what's going on in their world as well. So, when we talk about making interview requests, like I said, my friend would be wonderful at what that might look like. But you kind of have two different roles here. So your role is obviously you're trying to identify the right source who's going to give you the information that you need. But it's also to be educated. Some of the best reporters that I worked with had done their homework, and they came in and they had very specific, even very tough questions for us. And that is actually easier on a PR person to deal with educated, tough questions than someone who's uneducated and comes in and you're trying to get them up to speed in a very short period of time, especially if it's something that's complex. So I would much rather have you call me and ask me something difficult like that you know that I know you have information, you have records, you have other interviews, than if you call me up and want me to try to educate you now on healthcare reform or Obamacare. That's really hard. And you're going to ask questions then that might be difficult for you and for the person that you're trying to interview. The next one is to kind of have a theme of what your story is going to be. Your news angle. I don't want to control as a PR person or manage your story. But again, the more that you're willing to share but be fair with me about what you need, the more likely that I'm going to be able to make sure that I meet the right request for you. And then allow as much time as possible before the interview is needed. There are always things that happen on short deadlines. But if you have an assignment here that your story's due in a week, one of the first things you should do is try to get up to speed and make the request for the interview, rather than wait till day 5 or 6 and then hope that it can get made. And then this last one I'll kind of talk about over here, but the concept of negotiating ground rules if needed. And I'm not a fan of them, but we'll talk about them. So from the PR person side, it's really helpful knowing what information you know, need, or have to make sure that I've identified the right person, time, or channel for that interview. Whether or not, again, preference for a lot of people on both sides of this equation is over the phone, in person. Excuse me. Email doesn't always work for a lot of reasons for everyone. Very honestly, when I worked with executives, it's much easier to prepare them and put them on the phone for 15 minutes with you than to try to do email questions. So I'm not advocating to do that at all. Not to get into all my war stories, but when I was at Lilly, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm sitting at my desk. I get a call from a reporter in Florida. Hey, want you to comment on this lawsuit that was filed against Lilly about Prozac Weekly. And that's one of the products that I managed. I'm like, I'm not aware of a lawsuit. And this will date me, but can you fax it over to me? Sure. Well, a lot of times in legal cases, that's part of the strategy of lawyers, is they will release it to the media before it's actually made it to the defendant. Okay, so he starts telling me about how apparently our sales force got a doctor's office to write prescriptions for Prozac Weekly for patients who are on other antidepressants. And then they got Walgreens to fill this using a coupon from Lilly and mailing it to these people. So they got these mailings in their mailbox with no discussion with their doctor, but a free trial of Prozac Weekly. That doesn't make sense. So I call the marketing manager for the brand. She says, that doesn't make sense. And she comes over to my office. We call the sales manager in Florida. And he's like, oh, yeah, we thought it was the best practice. We were going to talk about it at the next conference. We're now getting sued because of that. But Lilly, in and of itself, had not seen the lawsuit. And now we have a journalist at 2 o'clock in the afternoon who wants comment by 6 o'clock. All right, so now we have employee legal issues, right, because we had employees that did something. We have regulatory issues with the FDA. And we've got the lawsuit itself. I could go on. So we have all these things. We've got to figure it out to give him a comment and get back to him that afternoon. So, and then by the end of that story very quickly spread. And I mean, I was apologizing. We ultimately decided legally we could apologize, which was the best thing to do. But I spent the next week apologizing all over the media. I was quoted on CNN and everything like that. So, so the next thing is kind of prepare a spokesperson with the facts and the details. You might think that a person has all that information at their fingertips, and often they don't. So sometimes my job might be to help that person find the information or gather it or help try to put it in perspective. And then the last thing is, after the interview, is to follow up on any remaining questions. So if you interview, like for example, I work with the chief medical officer. You interviewed him, you were with the New York Times, you interviewed him, and there were some things you asked that he didn't have the information for. You wanted some specific statistics or something like that. My job might be simply to follow up with that information. Not with quotes or anything, but just with information we may not have had. So that fine line of knowing this information helps me better prepare that person for the interview. If you called me right now and said, hey, I want to talk to you about the public relations program. Well, there's some information I have in my head, but there's other things that I would probably need to look up or refresh in my mind. So that's where you have to find that balance of exclusivity and timelines with making sure that the interview gives you what you need. Sometimes as a PR person, I talked to my journalist friends about something that had absolutely nothing to do with my organization, but I thought made a good news story. And that helps with that credibility as well. So make friends with our students over at CardComm and everything as well, because we've got clients that we're trying to pitch as well, and we might have some interesting things going on as well.